Choice Hotels get you more of what you value. Comfort Inn, it's calling your name. Save on the stay. Oh, and free waffles are yours to claim. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
Never go to the second location. Always trust your gut.
Hello, my name is Chrissy Champagne, and you are listening to Residue, a true crime podcast dedicated to keeping you paranoid. On Residue, we tell you the truth behind your favorite movies, and today we are talking about the film Open Water, the true story behind the disappearance of Tom and Eileen Lonergan. Don't forget to follow Residue on Instagram at Residue Podcast, TikTok Residue a True Crime Podcast, and Facebook Residue a True Crime Podcast. And do not forget to DM me your suggestions for movies. I mean, I have a humongous list already going, but I am going to start adding extra episodes each week. And I thought maybe I could talk about some music and television scandals. And like I always say, the greatest thing you could possibly do for any podcast that you love, especially mine, is leave a positive review, because that helps push the podcast out to more listeners. You all rule my world. Resi Crew forever. Thank you for all of the support. And before we get started today, remember that listener discretion is always advised. Open Water was released in 2003, and it is loosely based on the true story of the disappearance of Tom and Eileen Lonergan. Now, this film follows an American couple who go on this scuba diving vacation only to find themselves stranded miles from shore in shark-filled waters. The film follows Daniel, played by Daniel Travis, and Susan, played by Blanchard Ryan. They are an overworked married couple who book a tropical scuba diving vacation to reconnect. And during a routine group dive, they drift away from the others for just a short time. And when they surface, the dive boat has vanished. A headcount mistake convinces the crew that everyone is back aboard, and the boat returns to shore without them. So how closely is this film based on Tom and Eileen Lonergan? Well, emotionally, it is a very close representation, but it's very loose with the facts. So the core incident is taken directly from the Lonergans' disappearance. They're a married American couple, a recreational scuba trip. Now, Open Water is one of those rare horror films that becomes more unsettling the more you learn about the real story behind it. This is like a slow burn type of film. That's one of my favorite genres of film. I like a scary horror movie that takes a little bit longer to tell you what's going on. And rather than turning the Lonergan's disappearance into a conventional shark movie, writer-director Chris Kentis and his wife, producer Laura Lau, they wanted to make this less Hollywood and just more authentic and real. And they were both experienced scuba divers. So they knew how to make this film feel like you were actually inside of the film. You were on that boat with those people. This was not like Jaws. They weren't going to use mechanical sharks. They were going to use real sharks to film this. Professional shark handlers worked throughout the filming, and the actors spent significant time in the water with real sharks, and they knew this before accepting their roles. I'd be like, who's my co-star? Because if it's not like Ryan Gosling or, I don't know, Charlie Hunnam, I don't want to be in the movie. Thanks, bye. So they wanted the real authentic shark movement because they felt like mechanical or CGI sharks would make the film feel less believable. Open Water is often cited as one of independent cinema's biggest success stories because the budget was about $500,000. It was only 79 minutes long, and this movie grossed worldwide box office about $55.5 million. Roger Ebert gave Open Water a highly favorable review, writing that it created an unusually visceral sense of dread. Roger Ebert wrote, "Rarely but sometimes a movie can have an actual physical effect on you. It gets under your defenses and sidesteps the, quote, 'it's only a movie' reflex and creates a visceral feeling that might as well be real. Open Water had that effect on me." It is one thing to be in danger of losing your life. It is another thing to have hours and hours to think about it and to discuss how casually the Caribbean vacation was settled on instead of a ski holiday. The angriest line in the whole movie may be, "We paid to do this." They went to a good deal of trouble and expense in order to be abandoned at sea. For most of an hour, we are essentially watching Susan and Daniel float and talk and think. And their dialogue is believable. There's no poetry, no philosophy, no histrionics, just the way people talk when they know each other well. And they're trying to kid themselves that things are not as bad as they seem. How could they be forgotten? How could the crew not notice their gear on board or their missing air tanks? Surely the boat will return. Certainly there will be a search. Roger Ebert ends his review with, "So you see, I was not afraid as I watched the movie. I was not afraid of sharks or drowning or dehydration. I didn't feel any of the Jaws emotions, but when it began to grow dark, when a thunderstorm growled on the far horizon, a great emptiness settled down upon me. The movie is about what a slender thread supports our conviction that our lives have importance and make sense. And we need the conviction in order to live at all. And when it is irreversibly taken away from us, what a terrible fate to be left alive to know it." What happened to Tom and Eileen Lonergan? Both born and raised in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Tom Lonergan was 33 and Eileen Lonergan was 28. And according to an allthat'sinteresting.com article, they were avid divers, and the couple was described as young, idealistic, and in love with each other. Tom and Eileen loved the sea. They loved exploring reef life, and diving brought them together. They were both so incredibly passionate about diving. They touched a whale in Fiji in July of 1997, and Eileen was convinced that she became one with that whale, even writing a letter to her mother about this adventure and explaining that nothing will beat this experience in her mind. Like, she's reached the pinnacle of anything she could ever experience. And Tom wrote in his diary that no other dive has been better than this. Tom also wrote, "I feel as though my life is complete and I'm ready to die. However that sounds to someone else, it's what I feel in my heart." Tom and Eileen met on campus at LSU. They both joined the Air Force ROTC, and Tom was the only guy that Eileen ever dated. In fact, she wrote a letter home to her mother explaining that she found a new friend and she was really excited about this new relationship. Now, you can see interviews with Eileen's parents, the Haynes. They're on a 2020 episode that I watched, one of my main sources for this week's episode. And you can always find my sources in my show notes. So Tom and Eileen are madly in love. And Tom was going to move to Texas because he had this job lined up. He was getting an engineering position in the Air Force. Eileen's parents were a little worried, but not really, because they said that their daughter was the type of personality that she was very spontaneous. And when she wanted to do something, she did it. So she calls them and tells them, "Hey, so I'm going to marry Tom." And her dad jokes and says, "Well, could you at least tell me his last name first? Like, we barely know this guy." But they were so happy for Eileen because they never saw her this happy with a man before. And they knew that if this was something she wanted to do, she's going to do it. So these two have a very quiet ceremony. They don't even invite friends or family. It's just the two of them. And in 1995, they moved to Fiji because it was always Eileen's dream to join the Peace Corps. And her mother said that she was very happy to see that she actually made this dream come true. So these two live on a remote group of islands for nearly 2 years. They have hardly any contact with the outside world. Everything is very primitive. I mean, no phones, no electricity. Coworkers and friends of the couple say that these two were never apart. You never saw Tom without Eileen. And Tom even wrote in his diary that Eileen was everything to him. She was his everything. He could have never done half of the things that he did in his life if it wasn't for Eileen. So while on these islands, the couple worked as teachers, and they did confide in friends that the teaching job was pretty difficult, and they were frustrated at times because some of the students were really difficult. Friends say that Tom and Eileen often complained about that aspect of this job. But these two had their passion for the sea, and that was their safe space. So after 3 years of service in Fiji, they were ready to move on. They talked about it. They said, listen, we should get off this group of islands. We should go do what we've always wanted to do. We want to travel. And so they planned one of the most spectacular diving trips around the world. Like, they had their trip so planned out in every aspect, down to where they wanted to go, who they wanted to see, what they wanted to see. Every bit of detail was ironed out. And the first stop was Queensland, Australia. The Lonergans were diving from Port Douglas on the outer edge of the Great Barrier Reef. The Great Barrier Reef off the coast of northern Queensland is considered one of the world's premier diving destinations. And unlike shore diving, these are offshore reef systems located 30 to 40 miles from the Australian coastline. Divers travel by boat for up to 2 hours before reaching isolated coral reefs surrounded by the open coral sea. So this is often considered the diving wonder of the world at a 1/4 mile wide, over 1,200 miles long. And in January of 1998, the Lonergans arrive. They stay in the honeymoon suite at a hostel, and the owner of the hostel says that they were very polite. They were really nice people, but they were a little upset because they arrive in January, which is rainy season, and it is not the best time for diving, but they still went out on a day trip anyway, and they took a charter boat with a group of divers. Visibility wasn't great this day, and the coast was being pounded by winds and rains, so Tom and Eileen just waited a few days. On January 25th, 1998, Tom and Eileen board a charter boat called Outer Edge. It was the Outer Edge Dive Company charter tour. And this day is a gorgeous day. They're on the boat with 25 other divers. It's beautiful out. This is the day that they have been waiting for. Everything's going perfectly. So the Lonergans were the last out of the water for 2 of the first dives that the boat did. They were expert divers. They knew what they were doing, so they knew how long they could stay underwater. On the boat that day, it was mainly snorkelers. There were a couple divers, including Tom and Eileen, and everyone is given a dive master. So the dive masters will guide you and stay next to you, help you out with anything you need. But obviously, Tom and Eileen do not need a dive master next to them. They chose to dive away from the dive masters and the rest of the boat, and they just wanted to be alone. But they entered the water around 3 p.m., and they're told to be back on that boat by a very specific time. And now, like I said, the first 2 dives that everyone did, they didn't return exactly at the same time that everyone else did. They were always a little bit behind everyone else. They were still on time. They were just always the last to come back. They were just enjoying every single second possible. So they entered the water at 3 p.m. Everyone else gets back on that boat at the specific time they are told to be on. Head counts were done. Everyone is back on the boat, and not one person notices that Tom and Eileen never boarded the boat. The Outer Edge arrives back in Port Charles, and on the dock, everyone gathers their belongings. But 2 pairs of shoes were left behind. And the bus operator who was there to pick up the Lonergans, he's wondering where they are. He calls the office to ask what's going on, and he is told they never arrived. They're not here. So their bus leaves. No one noticed that this couple was missing for 2 days. Now, let me just explain to you what could possibly happen to a human being if they were stranded at sea in this particular area. So being stranded in the sea in Queensland, Australia, a sequence of extreme physical environmental challenges will arise, and your survival timeline is dictated by a lack of fresh water, harsh exposure to the elements, and the local marine life. So day 1, without a flotation device, physical exhaustion sets in because you're rapidly treading water. Under the sun, you're going to experience severe sunburn. Dehydration can begin within hours. Day 2, the human body can generally only survive about 3 days without fresh water. And as cells shrink, the intense craving for water may lead to drinking seawater, which accelerates kidney failure and causes hallucinations. By day 3 and beyond, this is fatal exposure. Hypothermia can set in overnight, and even in tropical waters, when the body's energy reserves are depleted, hypothermia is gonna kick in. And there's also the risk of marine stings like jellyfish or shark encounters. It is not until late Tuesday afternoon when workers with the Outer Edge find a bag that was left behind on the boat. Now, this trip happened on Sunday. They did not find the bag that Tom and Eileen left on that boat until Tuesday afternoon. They call management, and management calls the police. By the time everyone figures out that Tom and Eileen never came back, it's too dark to start a search. So search efforts don't even begin until dawn the following day. And there were 20 aircraft searching this entire area. And at this point, there is a possibility that they were alive. So police begin the investigation. They go back to the reef. Nothing is found, no evidence, no bodies. And the parents and families are notified. Eileen's parents receive a phone call telling them that their daughter and her husband had been left out on the Great Barrier Reef for 3 days prior and are not believed to be alive at this point. They were told, quote, "Don't get your hopes up." And now back in Baton Rouge, Eileen's family gathers with community. And in Queensland, the press is going wild. Everyone wants to know, where are they? Huge boats are always out in this area. How did nobody see them? 4 days into the search, it is called off. Now, obviously, the diving industry is freaking out. This is a huge business. This is touristy. This makes a lot of money. Will people still go out? Will people still come here to go on these dive tours? Tom and Eileen have been missing for 10 days, and there are still no bodies. But police start pushing into the why. Why did this happen? Wasn't there a head count? Why didn't anyone notice that 2 people were missing? This was a really small group. There were only 25 people on the boat, so it should have been very easy to realize that, hey, it looks like 2 people might be missing. Obviously, everyone's talking. Everyone's coming up with conspiracy theories galore. I mean, tips are pouring in from people all over the place saying that they saw Tom, they saw Eileen. I mean, there's even footage of a news station just doing a news story, and they thought that they saw a truck passed by that had Eileen and Tom inside of the truck, and they chased the truck down, and they get up to the truck, and they're like, stop, are you the 2 missing tourists? And they're like, no. I mean, the guy did look a little bit like Tom. But all that to say, people are going wild. They are very suspicious. They're wondering, are they still alive? Did they plan this? Did they return to shore? So new theories are popping up every single day. Then, 10 days after they have been missing, a bunch of dive gear pops up on this remote beach. It's about 70 kilometers north of where they were first left in that water. And now this discovery is made and people are getting even more suspicious because, as they say, it's really weird that all of this gear would show up all at the same time on this little remote island. So they find Tom's buoyancy vest. They found a flipper that belonged to Eileen because it had her name written on it. They find 2 dive tanks, and all of this gear was in perfect shape. It was all unbuckled, and there were no teeth marks on any of this gear from sharks. So detectives are wondering, why would they discard their gear? This is looking suspicious to people, and the media starts focusing on the conspiracy theories, and they start really focusing on this guy named Milton Harris. Now, in 1985, Milton Harris was involved in this international life insurance fraud scheme. He was also from Baton Rouge. He also attended the very same church that Tom and Eileen attended. So people are putting this together and thinking, hey, did Tom and Eileen do exactly what Milton Harris did? So in May of 1985, Milton Harris faked his accidental drowning death in New Zealand to allow his family and beneficiaries to collect massive life insurance payouts back home. Following his death, his beneficiaries collected $516,596 from the Prudential Life Insurance Company of America, and his wife, Sheila Fowler Harris, also attempted to collect an additional $1.8 million from Lloyd's of London. Now, this Milton Harris story was really ridiculous and crazy. And so they're thinking, oh my God, did these two try to pull the same thing? But so I'll just close it up for you real quick with Milton Harris. He goes to Auckland. He calls himself Bill Travis. He even meets an English woman named Anne. They met through a Lonely Hearts advertisement. This guy stored stacks of money underneath his house, and police figure out that he called Sheila. Bill Travis called Sheila in Baton Rouge. Oh my God, I cannot say Baton Rouge. There we go. We did it. We got there. In 1989, he's caught shoplifting, and he tries to fake an escape by telling police he had eaten a light bulb. And then they took him to a hospital where he later escaped, only to be caught again. So anyway, this guy's extradited back to Baton Rouge and he's jailed for 5 years. He pleaded guilty to mail fraud and obstruction of justice. And now people are comparing what he did to the possibility that Tom and Eileen could be faking their own deaths. So I'm telling you that whole Milton Harris thing because the media was really pushing this and people are starting to really believe that, no, Tom and Eileen weren't left out there. I don't know, maybe it made their minds feel better to believe that they planned this whole thing on their own, because imagining those two left in that water is so beyond frightening. So people are also calling in tips, and there's a tip from this woman who owns a bookshop, and she sells maps, and she said that she believes Tom and Eileen came into her store and bought some maps. Another guy says that he believes he sold them 2 passports. Now, in the 2020 interview, Eileen's mother, Kathy, she discusses the fact that they went to Australia and they went on a boat to the same exact spot where Tom and Eileen were left. And she always held on to hope. She always had a little bit of hope that maybe they could be out there somewhere. But once she enters that area where her daughter was last seen, she feels like there's 100% no chance that they are alive. She knew right then and there. She could feel it. She said that it just feels so desolate. It's so scary out there. And she just felt her heart breaking for her daughter and Tom. Around this time, detectives are still searching, and they search the hostel room that Tom and Eileen were staying in, and they find a lot of items inside of a hostel lock safe. They found Tom and Eileen's passports, both of their diaries, and they start thinking, why would they leave their passports? These people have all these conspiracy theories about them possibly getting left in the water on purpose. They had a deal with the workers on the boat. They paid them money to not tell anybody, and then they probably took a boat someplace else, and now they're faking their own deaths. But police are like, they left their passports. They left their most intimate details in these diaries, and now these diaries are very confusing to detectives. Tom's diary reads, "I feel as though my life is complete and I can die. I feel as though my life can only get worse from here on out. It has already peaked." Eileen's diary read, "Tom explained to me that he is ready to die. Tom, you have a death wish. I believe this wish may very well lead you to be in the right place at the right time to get what you want, and I might get caught up in that since we remain together all of the time. Love, Eileen." Obviously, detectives start wondering, did Tom and Eileen, quote, seize the day? Was this the perfect opportunity for Tom to take his own life and take his wife's life? But they start investigating, and they go to Fiji and they talk to the coworkers that Tom and Eileen were with on those group of islands. And those coworkers are pissed off about this theory. They said, no way. There is absolutely no way that my friends would do something like this. 6 months after the couple has been missing, a weathered diver slate. This is a device used for communicating underwater. Now, this diver slate read, Monday, January 26th, 1998, 8 a.m. "To anyone who can help us, we have been abandoned on Agincourt Reef by MV Outer Edge, 25th January, 1998, 3 p.m. Please help to rescue us before we die. Help, Tom and Eileen Lonergan." So this is proof that they survived the first night. And forensic tests prove that this diving slate was authentic. This was Tom and Eileen's diving slate. They were truly left 38 miles at sea and were desperately trying to get help. And for 17 hours at sea, they were still pleading for help by sending out this diver slate. Now, Eileen's father, John Haynes, he always suspected that Tom and Eileen became dehydrated, disoriented, and they either drowned or they were attacked by sharks. Now, experts did speculate that based on the state of the gear that was recovered on that island, I mean, there were no shark bites on that gear, there was no blood on it, everything seemed intact, that the couple most likely did not experience an animal attack, but they probably became extremely dehydrated or started to get delirious. And they probably took off their diving equipment because they were so delirious from the dehydration. And without that equipment, they were unable to tread water for a long time and they would have soon drowned. 9 months after the disappearance, the coroner pronounces the couple dead by drowning or shark attack. The bodies of Tom and Eileen Lonergan have never been found. 1 year after the disappearance of the Lonergans, the captain of the Outer Edge is put on trial. So Captain Narn was charged with manslaughter by criminal negligence. And in 1999, an Australian jury found Narn not guilty after his defense argued that the crew had explicitly assured him the head count was complete. But his business, Outer Edge Dive, pled guilty to corporate negligence and received a heavy fine and was subsequently shut down. This extreme oversight forced the Queensland government to introduce much stricter safety protocols, making independent dual signature head counts legally mandatory for all dive captains. So this trial becomes a global media sensation, and this was largely because the defense used those private diaries that were found in the hostel lockbox, and the defense read Tom and Eileen's thoughts right in front of that whole courtroom, which I'm telling you really pissed off Eileen's parents. The defense was just really pushing the idea that the Lonergans did not accidentally drown because Captain Narn didn't do the appropriate head count protocol, that it was their plan to do this all the time. So, of course, the parents were pissed off hearing this during the trial. But Eileen's father actually said that he felt bad for Captain Jack Narn. And when the trial was over and Jack Narn was found not guilty of the criminal charges, he apologized to Eileen's parents, and they accepted his apology. They said, listen, Jack lost his business. He lost a part of himself. His friend said that he was never the same after this and that he has to live with this for the rest of his life. Jack Narn accepted responsibility. He told the truth in the courtroom. 4 crew members were never charged, but 3 of those crew members actually quit the diving industry completely. The most haunting part of Tom and Eileen Lonergan's story is that, for a time, they were still out there. The message found on that dive slate tells us that they survived the first night. They knew they had been left behind, and they were trying to let someone know where they were. They were waiting to be found. And somewhere in that vast stretch of ocean, 2 experienced divers were left completely alone, surrounded by nothing but open water and the hope that someone would come looking for them. And people did come looking, but they came far too late. In his review of the movie Open Water, Roger Ebert wrote, "It is one thing to be in danger of losing your life. It is another thing to have hours and hours to think about it. Fault is as meaningless as any other concept. Nothing they think or believe has any relevance to the reality they are in. Their opinions are not solicited. Their past is irrelevant. Their success, dreams, fears, loves, plans, and friends are all separated from them now by this new thing that has become their lives. To be still alive, but removed from everything they know about how and why to live, is peculiar. Their senses continue to record their existence, but nothing they can do has the slightest utility." Stay safe and stay paranoid. I will see you guys very soon. Residue is created, hosted, written, researched, edited, and produced by me, Chrissy Champagne.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.